Good morning. We're glad you're here, and we welcome you to the IRL Council Board of Directors meeting of February the 10th. If you would, please, we're going to rise for a moment of silence and stay standing for the pledge. Thank you. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We're now looking to the agenda. Are there any changes or modifications that we see? We've got some current information from our Drew Bartlett's DEP office, and we're going to ask that we move that up because into the sequence of things, because I believe this is quite stimulative. I believe we will find it. Drew, I'm building you up so that you'll really come across here and give us. Okay. Next time he's coming back with a big check, and so we want to. So all of those good things. Are there any agenda revisions, please? Hear none, other than we will make some modifications on the order of presentation. We do have, there was a mail out or email out of all the former minutes. Any additions or corrections? Or the minutes, yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, we just noticed, and I apologize, I can't imagine this slip, but on the agenda, it says February 10, 2016, so we need to just amend that to 2017.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Do we hear a motion for the minutes to be accepted as presented, please? Move approval. It's been moved by, what are we going to call ourselves? Have we ever resolved that, or are we just council? Bubba?
Legally, it's IRL Council.
Council person, councilman,
Council people?
peoples? Member Bernique, and seconded by, who seconded?
Councilman Smith.
Yes, did you, Kurt, you second that? So seconded by Councilman Smith. Any opposed? Hear none, that's accepted unanimously. We then have the motion for the agenda, to adopt the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, just a comment. I think
Please.
the restructuring of the agenda of having the committee's report, I think, is excellent. I want to compliment Dwayne on restructuring that. That's a good move, and I so move.
Been moved by Member Bernique. Second, please. Smith, second. Any further discussion? Any wish to vote no? That's accepted unanimously. We do have some resolutions and recognitions, and we have some extremely important recognitions. We have those that are with us that have been a leader in this group and association for years and years and Dwayne, I misplaced what you had given. You got another one? Maybe you took it. Okay. We do have the announcement, our new member, Deb Denny's from Volusia County, is not able to be with us on her initial visit or our initial membership because she's in Washington. Unfortunately, the airlines have shut down, so she's not able to be with us. But fortunately, we do have Councilwoman Billy Wheeler, who is newly elected as the council member from Volusia County, and we're just delighted you're here. we look forward to your contributions as well. We have a resolution and recognition awards for IRL Council Leadership Appreciation Awards. The creation of the IRL Council and the restructuring of the National Estuary Program required a lot of travel, many meetings, development of a regional team, unified in a goal to protect the lagoon. This year, 2 of our founding board members rotated off the council. We want to recognize and thank them for their leadership. Doug Daniels, former councilman with Volusia County, and Richard Gilmore, former mayor of, and councilman of the city of Sebastian. Let's go to the podium so that we can, Dwayne's going to make these awards, please. So, oh boy.
On up, Richard. Did Doug make it?
No.
Thank you very much.
Wow, beautiful.
We really appreciate all the service. And I think a photo would be appropriate, don't you think?
Yeah,
Kathy's on the spot.
what about, let's do it this way.
And you know what we could do, Mr. Chair?
Maybe him come up and then we can stand, would that be good?
That'd be great.
Be good. I think that'd be easier.
Go on up and we'll do it up top.
Oh, okay.
I don't like pictures anymore.
I'll let you hold Doug
Okay,
on
thank
his
you.
behalf.
Thank you on behalf of Doug. He's never going to see this. Just saying.
Great in the family room, right? That's a great way to start.
Hello, good to see you.
Tight in a little bit, please. Good, thanks.
Which one has Photoshop?
Yeah, makeup. We need makeup.
Thank you. That is pretty.
Oh, and just a announcement, if you think this is pretty, our art club is producing an art show to benefit the lagoon. And it's going to be March 18th and 19th. You're all invited. It's going to be next door at the Art Center, and a percentage of our sales are going to go to the Lagoon Art Center, or the Lagoon Council, for educational purposes. So that's March 18th, and I'll have flyers back there, so.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
And we will be making announcements about that show through our website and our communications. Thank you.
Dr. John Windsor, if you would, please. Dr. John has long served the entire area in the lagoon, and it's in recognition of his lifetime service. He's been the scientific anchor for the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program since the beginning of the Technical Advisory Committee. For over 25 years, John has served as the chair of the Technical Advisory Committee. His willingness to serve, commitment to scientific excellence, and passion for the environment has been the foundation for the advancement of the IRL National Estuary Program. He recently retired. I don't know how you can do that, actually. They need you too much. But he recently retired as professor at FIT and is recognized as an emeritus advisor to our STEM. John has jumped back into the deep end of the Indian River Lagoon as an appointed oversight committee member for Brevard County Save Our Lagoon 300 Million Restoration Initiative. So they're counting on you to continue your good work.
Thank you.
You sure do. My wife wanted to know if I could quit today now.
The answer is no.
None of that.
That ain't happening.
None of that.
Okay? All requests go to my wife from now on.
You're just trying to get us all in trouble, you know?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
We have one more award, and this award actually had been vetted through our Management and STEM Advisory Committee, our Management Board. And there was once a proud tradition within the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program to identify an Indian River Lagoon leader or leaders with a Mangrove Menace Award. This isn't an annual award, and it was only done with special recognition for those that went beyond the call of duty on behalf of the lagoon. And notable past recipients included Ruth Stambridge, 2002, Bill Kerr, 2002, who's here today to join us, one of the few who are still at the table with us for so many years, Ted Moorhead in 2003, the late George Bunnell, 2005, and in 2010, recognition for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and NASA for a heroic effort during a cold snap to rescue, it was hundreds of sea turtles. So the National Estuary Program Management Board and staff felt that it was time to dust the snook off and recognize the efforts of you, the IRL Council Board of Directors. It's rare to see government reinvent itself, and in fact, I'm here largely because of that reinvention that you started. It's also more rare still to see the creation of a 5-county, 2-water management district and state agency coalition with a clear vision, a unified vision dedicated to stand in unity to restore a failing coastal ecosystem. So on behalf of the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program, the Management Conference, the citizens that you all represent, we're proud to recognize the IRL Council Board and your alternates and Carolyn Anse, our legal counsel during that time of transition, for the Snook Award. And so you are today going to see, and many of you may never have seen this, the Mangrove Menace Award.
Oh, look at that.
It has been long in the hands of this organization. You are now all recognized together as part of this award. And you're part of this history of leadership. So thank you on behalf of your staff, all of the volunteers in our management conference, and the citizens that you all represent. And we'd like to take a picture. And also, we'd like to have Jennifer DeMeo come up, because we could not have done that without the support of the EPA. So Jennifer and Carolyn, join this photo.
Who's the artist on that? It's an old award, I know, but do you know who did that?
We're trying to find
Bill Kerr, would you please come up as a past recipient? And Bill, do you remember who the artist was for this? We can't decipher the signature on the snook tail.
I'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out. We'll look back on the records.
Jennifer?
Yeah, it's like 20
Hey, Bill.
We seriously need makeup.
Not sure that would do it, but
And if you want to gaze at it, it is always in our office. You can't take it home, but thank you so much.
That's an award. That I like.
Nah.
thank you, sir.
Sure is pretty.
Just before we start our presentations, I would like for us to give opportunity to Drew. This is, in my view, I was only semi-kidding about the check.
I understand.
Okay. Please.
So I asked to be on the agenda to talk about, activities in Tallahassee and what we're up to for Lagoon benefit. As we all know, 2016 was a very difficult year for the Lagoon, and it really opened everyone's eyes on what needed to happen for the Lagoon. And, of course, I took a lot of personal interest in trying to make sure that we could actually get something done in the Lagoon. And so I had told you last time that the department did get a $20 million request into the department's ask of the governor. The governor did submit his budget 2 weeks ago, and I'm happy to tell you that that $20 million went to $60 million for the Lagoon in his budget request. And so what I've got for you, and that's for the Lagoon itself, and I've got two things here. One is Lagoon, let me just take it one at a time. So we have, it's in front of you, this one pager. It's called Indian River Lagoon and Caloosahatchee Cleanup Initiative. This is the $60 million request that the governor made to the legislature, and it is for $40 million for septic to sewer conversion and $20 million for muck removal and large-scale stormwater projects, because that is really what we need to focus on to get the health of the lagoon cleaned up. There are more than that, but that is a big lift for us in the lagoon. That's in his budget request. That is a lot of money, and it's a new ask of the governor. 40 million of that is in GR. 20 million is in Land Acquisition Trust Fund. If y'all speak budget, GR is general revenue. It's a big ask for the lagoon. So we, as a council, need to rally as much as we can to get this in. This is eligible for the entire stretch of the lagoon and the Caloosahatchee. So it's Volusia County through Palm Beach County. Okay, so one of the things I'm doing, and I've been meeting with a lot of your staff on putting together how this money would be used. Okay, so, and this cannot be accomplished. Septic to sewer, muck removal cannot be accomplished in 1 year. This is not a 1 year budget request. So this needs to reoccur. And so I am asking for basically 10-year plans from each county, from each local government. I've got some out of Martin County, Brevard County. I met with Indian River County yesterday. They're going to try to put something together. And I've met with Volusia County as well, but on the western side of the county. So now it's time to talk about the eastern side of the county, because there's springs on the western side. So I will give you, and St. Lucie, Commissioner, I'll give you guys sort of a framework that I got from Brevard, so that you can see what I'm talking about. You know, how much can the local bring, then how much do you need from the state? Because I'm trying to put this together for all the lagoons so that we can go downtown and say, this is why we need $60 million for septic to sewer, for muck removal, and for large-scale stormwater projects. I got yours, Commissioner, from Martin County today, and it looks good, so that's very helpful. But we're needing it before March. So it could be very high level, doesn't have to be, it's planning level cost estimates. But that's what we're needing to justify this kind of budget request. If we see it come out in the Senate or the House's budget the way the governor asked, right now, the way I'm sitting, that would be surprising. It's a lot of money. But so it's going to take our effort to really educate and make sure everyone understands the importance of this kind of budget request, because it's unprecedented for this area. So that's septic to sewer, muck removal, stormwater. Also, you have a bill draft that I handed out, and for those in the audience, these are all on the back table. This is a bill. It's getting introduced today in the House. Dana Young is carrying it. It's been introduced in that's in the Senate. It's been introduced in the House. by Representative Stone. This is basically amending Legacy Florida. Legacy Florida last year was passed, signed by the governor in May, which dedicated $50 million to Springs, around $200 million to Everglades restoration. This amends it to put a minimum of $20 million per year dedicated to Indian River Lagoon restoration with septic to sewer, stormwater, and muck removal. So we're trying to, because like I said, we can't do this in 1 year. So this is another bill that I'm hoping we can rally around to try to get dedicated funding for the lagoon for those specific projects. And it's the same counties, Volusia through Palm Beach, and then Caloosahatchee we're including as well. So that bill is accompanied, it's talked about in this one pager, so you can use this material. That's why we created it, to try to help educate on the lagoon challenges. So the other request that Governor Scott put in was $225 million for Everglades restoration, plus $30 million for land acquisition associated with Everglades restoration. Whenever you talk Everglades, the money goes way up, you know. So, but you'll see that for Indian River Lagoon, it's finishing the last bit of funding for C-44 stormwater treatment area. The Corps is building the reservoir. And then it's got land acquisition. I've got a breakdown of how we're looking at it for St. Lucie and Martin. But it also has land acquisition for the C-23, 24, and 25 projects to try to finish up the land acquisition associated with those projects. And then it has dispersed water management funding in it as well, you know, for a lot of those big projects that are happening in your basins to try to capture the water and prevent it from getting into the lagoon in a harmful way. So I wanted to get on the agenda. I can answer any questions, but this is just an unprecedented kind of budget ask, and I think it's really up to the council to get really mobilized around this kind of request.
Yes, please, Kurt.
I know this goes probably without saying, but I think just to piggyback on what you just said, it's incumbent upon each one of us to work our local legislators, both in the House and the Senate side, and get them to push this, because, as you said, it's unprecedented, but we're only partway there. And the second thing I want to say is, if we weren't in public, I'd give you a big hug. Because this is terrific.
Thank you.
Are there other comments, questions? Yes, sir, Chris.
It would really be helpful if what you just said was delineated on a sheet that I could distribute to interested people in my particular area. I tried to write it down, but it doesn't hold the same.
That's really what I'm trying to provide with these, but maybe you're talking about something else I said. But those materials are for handing out and talking about the importance of the lagoon and the budget request. And it's the one that says Indian River Lagoon and Caloosahatchee Cleanup Initiative.
Chris?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Drew, again, good news. We appreciate the effort that you've undertaken on our behalf and that of our constituents. A couple of questions. I didn't obviously go through the bill as to how it will be set up, but from the septic to sewer, $60 million, although certainly a great start. One of the processes that I have been trying to get through is to create a fund, an MSTU fund, basically, that we could draw off of, that communities could partake in, and create the structure. Who will create the structure, if there will be one, or will we be tasked to create a structure and then submit it to you or to the governor for approval, and how those funds would be distributed?
In this budget request? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so basically, it will be administered by DEP, and I'll just show you. And so what we're looking to do is come up with 10-year plans like this. This is like year 1 through 10, okay? And it has all the various projects in it and how much the locals will bring versus the state will bring. What we want to do with each jurisdiction is enter into an agreement with that jurisdiction to fund each year, such that when that year comes and the appropriation comes, we just amend the agreement and send you a check, right? So it's not, there's no recompetition, there's no ranking procedures, because what we know that the lagoon needs, we know it needs muck removal, we know it needs the septic to sewer, and we know it needs stormwater. So let's figure out all those needs, map them out in 10 years, and get to work. And we can get to work in a local agreement with the department such that every year when that rolls around, hey, we need $800,000 for phase 2. Okay, amend the agreement, $800,000 comes your way. Because what we've run into in the past, and we've been experiencing this with our Springs programs, is we've been getting $50 million a year, we resolicit, recompete, and what that puts the local jurisdictions into this, they can't really count on the money every year. And so when they're doing phase 1 of that sewering project, and they know there's a time opportunity to move on to phase 2, if they don't have that guarantee that we're going to be there at phase 2, then it really makes it difficult locally. So we're trying to set up a 10-year plan that you guys can count on the money arriving. So, and that's why it's important that we pass both the budget request and the bill so that we know the money will come every year.
And you talked about the local commitment. Is it going to be 50-50, 75-25? or any-
It's 50-50 right now at a minimum. So it's, right now, I've been getting all the projects. I think we can fit all the needs into 60 million. But that, we have to look at that. So I'll say this as well. It's 50-50 over the long term. So in any one year, if it's 60-40 or something like that, and the next year it's 60-40 the other way, as long as over the long term it ends up 50-50, then I think we'll probably be good. But every year is going to be different for each jurisdiction because, each project is different.
My last question is, will there be a staff person specifically to answer questions or to engage our staff as this unfolds? Possibly?
Yes. So and I can give that to Dwayne to send out.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks. That was good information. I wanted all of us to be able to share that. Just a second, Amy. I wanted all of that. And Jennifer, we want you to come and talk to us too. But I wanted you to have this revelation so that you would know what your support and Chris's support as we have come together and as we are now functioning for this entire lagoon, the things that we're starting to have happen. And come, because you have been a significant factor in having all of this come together.
Well,
Chris, Jennifer DeMayo from EPA from the district office.
yeah, well, thanks for having me. Right now, things are a little unsteady, I guess. No, I don't want to say unsteady, but we're just keeping our eyes on our programs, our heads down. We're working hard to do what we can and what we've always done, including continuing our support for the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program. So we've been working with Frank, Dwayne, and Kathy with funding this upcoming work plan, the FY17-18 work plan that they've been working hard on. What we've decided so far is that partial funding is an option at this juncture. So what we're going to be doing is the money that we have in-house right now, we're going to go ahead and as soon as the work plan is submitted to EPA, which the council staff has done an amazing job setting you guys up so that EPA has said we will accept work plans beginning March 1st as opposed to later. It was June 1st. So we're going ahead and accepting the work plans earlier so that we can go ahead and get that money out that we have. We recommend that the IRL Council approve the work plan in full for the whole shebang, so that when we do receive that extra money, which we are, you know, we do think will happen. There's nothing that's saying that it won't happen. But when we do receive that extra money, we can go ahead and fund that out, and then they won't have to come back to you and get reapproval for anything because the whole work plan will already be approved. So all that to say is that, you know, there's lots of stuff going on in the news, but there's nothing that what we've heard internally and that would change anything. So we're just keeping our eye on the ball, and I fully expect to once again be able to support the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program in the full $600,000 as we do every year. You might get money in incremental pieces because we just want to make sure that any money that EPA has currently, we want to get it into your hands as soon as possible.
I'll take it.
We're for that.
And we're able to do that because of Dwayne, Kathy, and Frank and their work in getting the work plan up and ready and well vetted so that you can meet this. You know, the doors open at EPA in March 1st, which has never, from what I understand, has never happened before. So y'all are in a well position to go ahead and we can roll that money out several months prior to when we've had in previous years.
Wow.
Okay?
Appreciate the
Okay,
efforts that are
thank
being
you.
made to protect us all. Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, before you move forward, I'd like a point of clarification, and I want to just add something to Jennifer's comments. Do you all anticipate or want to give me some direction as to support for the bill and the position of DEP? I know each of you in your counties have lobbyists, have capability of doing that, but if you want me to champion that on your behalf as council, I will need direction to do so.
And what we want to make sure, would that change our status as far as lobbyists?
For me, I get phone calls, so I don't go up to lobby. When I get calls from offices, whether it's congressional office, you know, or state legislators, you know, I provide factual information. And so if, you know, you had a position on this, then I can make a statement that the IRL Council Board of Directors has taken a position without crossing that lobby. I think it'd be inappropriate for me to be the lobbyist. We've had that conversation before because you all have your own lobbyists. But, you know, having some direction is useful to me because there's multiple bills, you know, going around, and I get asked frequently, almost weekly in the last 4 weeks. I'm getting lots of phone calls about, what do you think? And so if you have a formal position for me to represent, we can take that next step. Otherwise, I'm giving everybody just your IRL Council position statement that we drafted, which, by the way, is you could connect the dots between that and this exciting time that we see in the legislature. And so there's nothing that you have directed me to represent to date that does not support those actions that are happening legislatively. But if you wanted to take it to a next level, then I'd need to have some direction.
Okay, so the director is, we're out of sequence a little bit, but we're going to go back into that here in just a second. The director is asking for specific authorization, and so we need to propose
Mr. Chair, Carolyn, do you have any insight that we may take from a legal position?
As far as Dwayne taking a position on behalf of the organization on this particular piece of legislation in the budget request, there's no legal issue turning him into a lobbyist. It's within the course and scope of his employment as the executive director of the organization. It's not his primary responsibility that he's been contracted for. We've done this research before, both at the federal and state level, and he'd have no problem doing that. As he indicated, he's not proposing to go up to Tallahassee to be a primary advocate, but just fielding the calls. I don't see any legal issue with it.
And, Mr. Chair, and
Do we have a
also,
motion?
I would, but I just want point of order, because this wasn't agended, do we need to open for public comment on the request for a motion?
We will.
I know that there'll be a lot of support, but I just, just saying.
after we get the motion, so they'll know what we're motioning.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve our Director of the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Council and Program to support the bill in his official capacity.
Member Zadowski has made a motion. Is there a second, please?
Can I amend? Support, can I amend, Chair?
Sir,
Support the bill and the budget request.
So moved.
been modified. We got that, Kathy? Okay, it's been modified. The seconder, Member Smith, modification's okay. Further discussion? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I would just appreciate a copy of it. I don't have that in my information here.
We'll follow up with
Thank you.
email of the package.
Thank you.
There were some edits I think we had, so we'll make sure what Drew handed out today that each of you gets by email.
Okay, because I did not have, it's not in
This is
there.
the last part of this. Yeah, look at, go all the way down.
That was his.
You
Okay.
got it?
Got it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Just a comment, and that's to, this didn't happen by accident, and so it's to recognize Drew's leadership in this and putting it forward. We're so fortunate for the lagoon, when you look at all the water bodies in this state that you're responsible for. On a very selfish note, I'm glad you're with us, so thank you, and thanks for having a guiding hand in this. It's much appreciated. Stand in support, moving it forward.
Is there, before we have the vote, is there any public? Yes, ma'am. Ms. Adams, please come.
And while she's coming up, who are the sponsors? Or you can
Stone?
get that to us.
In the Senate, it's Dana Young, and in the House, it's Representative Stone. I think it's Matt Stone. I can't remember his first name.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for letting me speak. I have a couple of questions. As you know, I've been working with local governments to submit legislative appropriations. All of the House and Senate forms are in at this point. And we did have a Senate meeting on Tuesday. The entire subcommittee, Appropriations Subcommittee for Natural Resources and Environment met and reviewed individual talking speeches from over 100 local governments that came up and presented their projects. Some presented 3 projects, some presented 1 project. I would say more than half of those were for septic to sewer. So when I've been going door to door with these local governments, they are very confused on how they're going to fund this. Martin County has taken a tremendous lead on this. John Pauley, who runs their Utilities Division, has been very busy going door to door to try and explain them how do you assess people that have septic and moving into sewer. What's the process of laying down a main line and then do feeder lines out to streets? How does that happen in succession? Neighborhoods come on, not all at once, but year after year. You do it over a 10-year plan. So I would recommend that perhaps Management Committee could host a meeting to talk about what types of septic systems are out there, because there are 3 major septic systems, and they all go with the geography of your area. So you can go with vacuum systems and so forth. And so it would be great if you could get 3 different vendors that show that. And I know this would be heavily attended, because right now your local governments are not fully on board with this. They're like, oh, it's not that big a deal. Maybe we have 600,000 septic tanks out there. But, when you think about the whole scheme of it, we might contribute maybe 2% out of the whole lagoon. So we're not that, we don't need to change. And so you still have people that are very much on the fence, like 80%. All of your counties are on board because your directors are on board. But the people that are in your towns and in your county and in unincorporated areas are not on board. And I think that particular bill and its funding allocated would fly very well if you let these people know that they are part of a greater whole. They belong to this big whole for the entire lagoon. And if they don't do it, but somebody else does it, you still have a hole in that pocket. You still have a problem with leaching going on. And, they truly believe that septic tanks, and sewer systems, because sewers are released all the time. We had a huge 400,000 gallon release the other day in O'Galley. Melbourne only paid $3,000 for that release. And the reason why they pay that bill is because they don't have $30,000 to upgrade the sewer system right now. So, you know, people see that happening. So they say, well, if they're going to do it, why do I have to change my septic tank? So there's a lot of uncertainty out there. And the biggest uncertainty is, well, you know, you can go ahead and put it in, but I'm not going to hook up. We have a state statute in Chapter 381 that says if you have a sewer line that's run, you get a notification from the health department that says if that feeder line comes down your street, you are under mandatory requirement to hook up in 365 days of that notice. People don't realize that. They don't realize that we have a state law on the books for that. So they're interested in going in. They're thrilled that we have the possibility of this septic to sewer coming down, but they're still saying, okay, but we have to still pay $10 million in our small community. We have a $2 million annual budget. We can't do that. How do we do that? It would be great if we could have those types of technologies relayed to them, options, and then also, here is how you fund it. We're not going to do $15,000 up front. We're going to spread it over 20 years on an assessment. And that will calm the spirits and bring people on board and realize that it's not going to be a $3,000, you know, bill every month, or even a $200 bill. It'll be, you know, a $40 bill. And that will bring people on, and you will get a lot more people behind you. But you have to explain it to the public. You really, it would be great if we could have a workshop on it, and you could go door to door in 5 counties, bring it to them, have them attend, and do it at a time that's reasonable. And you may do technologies and do funding in 2 different workshops. But if you want to be a leader and you want to support something that it's this tremendous for our lagoon, we need to let the people know. And we have to give them in small chunks to be able to swallow, because right now we're shoving it down their throats and they're saying, you haven't told me what it's going to cost yet. And right now there's estimates from $20,000 for one unit hookup to $6,000. And, you know, we've told them we're going to, you know, have them go in large groups, kind of like insurance, and you're going to lower the rate. Well, you know, if you're not going to do it all at once, that's not going to lower. It's really going to be higher, because the first people get $6,000, the second people on the next neighborhood get $12,000. Next people get $15,000, and because it, you know, it goes over time. So, you know, if we're not going to compete for the funding, then let's let them know. You don't have to compete. Let's get a plan together and get them on board to get that plan together. Because right now, your smaller towns are not going to step up. They're not going to give you a plan because they're scared to death that it's going to be so much money for them. So it's just my request that maybe we could do this, help facilitate the education process if you really want your residents to be on board in your businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, the comments made actually reflect what I was trying to get across earlier in my questions. I've been pushing this effort forward for over 5 years now, creating a municipal services tax unit or benefit unit, whichever fits. Those programs exist. Neighborhoods could together decide if they want to go forward. 2 things happen there. It can go over 20 years, it can go over 25 years or 30 years. Depending on the type of septics that are in those areas, those costs will be delivered up front and known prior to participating in the MSTU. The education process will come along with that. The addition is that multiple property appraisers have given me estimates that the value of a property, once on water and sewer, the value increases $10,000 to $15,000 per home immediately. The MSTU stays with the property for the period of time in which that is to be paid off. The benefit for the person making the investment or the agreement gets the value of that property up front, and if they were to sell their house after the program is done, that value is in the house, and it stays with the house thereafter and is paid for in the transfer of that deed. So there is a process that has been formulated. I brought it to, back then, Commissioner Putnam and his representative at the symposium at Harbor Branch 3 or 4 years ago now. So the concept does exist. The education process does exist. The incentive is you're going to add value to the home. And if it doesn't have water, if you can bring both at the same time, now you've created even a double option for individuals. So I think that those things can happen. I think that an education process is acceptable and something that really should be done. And I think each of our communities and counties and cities have MSTU, MSBU processes in which identification of a community can be done first, the cost figured out first, and then the education process, and then the application in order to vote. So those are my thoughts, and those are some of the things I've been working on for over 5 years, if it's helpful.
What, yes, ma'am, you would like to have public comment on this vote, this motion, please? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. My name is Andrea Ring. I live here in Sebastian. I am also on the Natural Resource Board for the city of Sebastian. And we did have a meeting at one of our boards, and we had people come in because they are going to need to be switched from septic to sewer. And the fact that their house might go up $15,000 is fine, but it's going to cost them $20,000 to hook up. We need to be able to help these people pay for the hookup, not just say you need to do it. We have to come up with money because they can't afford to hook up. $20,000, my house goes up 10. It's not gonna fly. I mean, they're gonna have to do it. And the Indian River County is working with them, trying to get them loans, very low interest loans, but still, it costs more than what they're gonna recoup. Just saying.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. What we're considering is support for a bill. What in all of these activities we've discussed are things that we would then search for ways to accomplish. Actually, I don't see anybody here at the moment from Martin County. Well, yes, we're candidly doing this, and we've got the financing, and we're moving forward, and we've got the financing for the individuals, and we've got the financing. So it's not a secret. It can be done. We're doing it. But I can't get into all of that right at this minute. That's not what we're looking to express. What we're looking to express at the moment is support for this bill. And it's been moved and seconded. Or is there any further discussion on the bill? Is there, if not, any of those that would oppose? That's unanimous, please. Let's reflect that as unanimous support for the bill and for the opportunity for the executive director to so indicate to those that would make inquiry or those that he would be having conversation with that the council has expressed unanimous support for these activities that have been focused by DEP in accomplishing these things for us. Is that the understanding of where we are? Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
Sorry. Wanted to let the vote go through, but the one thing I failed to mention, because I think it's very, the public education piece is actually, this isn't going to be successful without public education. And so along those lines, we do have a solicitation out for public education grants. And we got a total of $1 million set aside, but I can tell you if more comes in than that, we'll go look for the money, because no septic to sewer program will be successful without the public understanding it. And so we do have, and I don't know whether it's something that the NEP could apply for. I know we could apply for it, but local governments can easily apply for it, water management districts. But we do have money to fund public education, both on septic to sewer and on yard care. So I just want to make sure we're aware of that, because it's.
I thank you very much. I think that's important for let's make sure that goes out to the individual counties so that they're aware. That is a key issue, yes. Is there further discussion on this point? If not, we'll call for public comment in general. Yes, ma'am, if you like, please come to the podium. We don't have any? Let's give her opportunity after she speaks, if you fill one out,
Yes,
please.
sir.
After you speak, please. After you speak, after you speak.
Thank you, sir.
Then please.
I just want to make a brief introduction. My name is Abby Johnson. I am the new intergovernmental coordinator with the St. Johns River Water Management District. I'm replacing Ann Benetti. And to one of the points that was made, I didn't want to interrupt the vote as it went through. One of the opportunities available to our local municipalities is the district-wide cost share program that might be an effective tool moving forward as a lot of these septic to sewer projects are moving through. So that's one tool in our arsenal. I just wanted to make that note of to the general public here and remind our council. I'm available to you to provide a little technical assistance and connection with our staff at St. John's. And I just want to say good morning and thank you.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for coming up.
Mr. Chair.
Please.
So I'm glad she mentioned that because I know that local governments struggle with their side of the match, even on 50-50. We can consider St. John's funds as part of that, the local government's match. So you can even bring yours down, and it's all designed to offset homeowner costs. All of this is, so just wanted to make sure that you had that in your mind. Thank you.
Please. We're ready to move down to the present. Chuck, if you would, are you for our water quality update? Dr. Jacoby?
Thank you. Chuck Jacoby from the St. John's River Water Management District, and I'm also going to give you a little update on the southern end. Deb Drums is involved in the second part of the IRL symposium with a series of presentations this morning. So, for the northern part, the St. John's River portion of the lagoon, what we're seeing is that chlorophyll levels are still elevated, particularly in southern Mosquito Lagoon and in the northern Indian River Lagoon up sort of north of Titusville. And elevated is still at that range in the old days that we would become concerned about in the sort of 20 milligrams to 30 milligrams of chlorophyll per liter. So we're still seeing some of those same small single-celled phytoplankton algae that we saw in the past. Brown tide, these small blue-green or picocyanobacteria as we call them, they're still in the mix. Chlorophyll levels drop as you come further south pretty dramatically, and the last time that they were above 10 was sort of back in late December or early January. So we're seeing improvements in the lagoon beyond that northern part. The good news overall is that dissolved oxygen levels tend to be above 6 milligrams per liter, which is well and truly above any stressful level for fish and other aquatic organisms. Secchi depths vary from, again, from about a part of a foot to several feet to the bottom.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but for the non-technical person, when you're, for example, like on chlorophyll levels, and tell me what optimum would be also in the context of that. I'm glad they're improving, but if the number is 6, is optimal 10 or whatever, it just kind of helps me get my brain around it.
So below 10, we feel is quite acceptable. Above 20 tends to be a concern. So, and somewhere in between is what we'd see the oscillations typically. In the past, the levels that we've seen, say 2016 with the brown tide, that's up in the hundreds. So we're dropping. For oxygen, 2 milligrams is where stress tends to be. So we're at 6 to 8. And again, that's a little temperature dependent, so that varies from place to place. Secchi depths, which is a measure of water clarity, as I started to say, runs from parts of a foot to several feet or at the bottom. So one of the things that we are seeing now, seagrasses have definitely receded, even from the last measurements. But what we're seeing as the water clears is there's a fair amount of algae. Both attached algae and what we call drift algae, which is algae that rolls around on the bottom like a tumbleweed. So people are reporting that they're seeing seagrasses. They may well be seeing this algae instead. In the southern end, 2016 was a good year for oysters overall, so there was good recruitment. Seagrasses are fairly sparse in most places still down there. But there have been no major discharges since November 2016 from Lake Okeechobee, which is actually falling because it's been fairly dry, so the output of water is exceeding the input. So lake levels are dropping. They're about just short of 14 feet at the moment. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions, please. Thank you, sir. We'll have you back shortly. Yes, sir. For our management board report, please. Bob Yulovich, our chair. Yes, sir.
Good morning. Morning, Jen. Welcome. I would ask the board to indulge a pause in my presentation. Don't get too excited. I'll be back. In the same spirit as moving the agenda up so we can hear things, I would prefer ask that Chuck present the STEM stuff, Captain Frank present the citizen advisory, because I don't want to replicate that in regards to our meeting, and then I'll come back and do the management board wrap-up. Okay, so if the board would allow that, I'd like to hit the pause button and have...
All righty, please. Dr. Jacoby, if you would, let's, if you're...
So the STEM AC met, and again, focused mainly on the issues that you'll focus on today, which was the 17-18 budget and the CCMP revision. There was a fairly robust discussion among the people who were there. In terms of the budget, I think some of the take-home messages from the discussion were that people were concerned about the links among the parts of the budget. For example, restoration projects, we'll call turn dirt projects, they were recognizing that there's a link that goes to some of the endeavors that are, in a sense, more scientific in terms of helping us learn and adapt and improve as we move forward. And so there was, some discussion about how are we going to do that? Is that going to be built into the thinking as we go forward? Somewhat aligned with that was a concern about what I'll call a short-term and long-term view of the world. So everyone appreciates the fact that we want to be doing things, but we also need to invest in the future. So we were looking to have someone looking out for plans over, like the 10-year plan we just heard about. And it's those sort of efforts that people were concerned about. Overall, eventually the budget was approved unanimously. There was a request for a shift in some funding to move a bit of more funding into grant writing sorts of efforts. Then in terms of the CCMP, there was discussion about what were the key elements and how do they fit together. And the conclusion was that they support the initial effort and basically take a look at a draft and then come back and talk about revisions.
Have questions for Dr. Jacoby, please, on the STEM report? There was quite a bit of discussions about the allocations, and especially, yes.
Yeah, I think people, again, anytime you try to parse something, everybody has a slightly different idea of how you want to parse it. But ultimately they said, well, we'll give this a try as a strategic budget, which is the way that it came to be viewed, and then we'll see how we go. So they'll wait to see how the RFP comes out and look for language. There were concerns about how you would evaluate the projects. So they went a level below what the funding level would be and say, well, how will we evaluate these things? What will be key criteria? And I think that will be an evolving and learning process as we go.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Captain.
Thank you very much for letting me speak. Frank Catino is my name. I'm the chair of the CAC, and I'm going to speak on the small grant program. The CAC is very much in favor of the small grant program. We think that program gives us more stakeholders in the lagoon, and it keeps people engaged. We spoke at the CAC saying, what was the best thing that ever happened to the lagoon? And I know it's going to make everybody gasp. The best thing ever happened was the fish died. Because until the fish died, we wouldn't be here today. I mean, there's very little push in the lagoon system prior to these massive changes. So this grants, being small grants from $2,500 to $10,000, gets to a group of people that will help spread the word out there. be more education-based, help with graduate students looking for grants in their programs. Really not gauged to cities or counties. I think I'm a city official. We're looking for spending our time and effort writing grants that are much larger for stormwater and so forth. So this, I think, will hit a segment of the population that has a hard time getting grants, because 5 to 10 or 2,500 to 10 grand takes a city a lot of effort to do it for a little return. So I think this just touches a part of the community that will keep the word spread out there on the lagoon. Thank you. Any questions?
Hold just a second. What's being discussed is the proposal. Bob, are you going to get into this more deeply? Okay. All right.
Okay.
Probably. Thank you, Ken.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I had to reflect on what Amy said, and one of my favorite sayings is the best way to eat an elephant's one bite at a time. I'm going to go along with your agenda and address the matters in some order. Let's talk about 6B on your agenda, the draft management conference policy document, which has been posted on the website for a few months. We did have some comments relative to the management board. It's been agreed at the management board that staff would post those comments on the website. The primary focus of those comments dealt with, has been previously alluded to, the interconnectability of the committees and the roles and responsibilities of those committees. And as we've talked before, the committees were to look at that, identify roles that they felt they didn't need to be involved in, and roles that they possibly needed to be involved in. So basically, that's where we stand right now with the management conference policy document, which has a response date now. It's been extended to March 1st. Next item of business on your agenda is 6C. As you know, we have a financial subcommittee of 5 members. 2 of those members met extensively in January on a posted meeting with Frank. The chair's comments to me at the management board meeting was that very appreciative and very impressed with the level of detail and understanding that Frank has specifically in the budget. Joe Swimmer is the chair and was very complimentary of that. Unfortunately, since Joe and Kelly were the only 2 at that, there was no quorum, and they could not have any actions brought forth to the management board. My bigger concern is that initially this was a 5-member committee. I have yet to see one of the members in a year. And what that does is that places difficulty on the other 2 or 3, or 2 if they want to be active, to get anything done. Okay, so it's basically a chat discussion, and in my opinion, a waste of time in many regards. So I know Doug and I sit on the RAC at South Florida, and they have a rule there: if you miss so many meetings, you're gone. So we have 1 member that I've yet to meet the individual, see him. We have other 4 that have been intermittently active and typically at these meetings and all that. So we need to give consideration into replacing that 5th member or reducing the membership to 4, so that we can have some valuable input and appreciation for the expertise that these individuals bring. So that's my comment relative to your item 6C. Going on to 8A on your agenda, as noted, we had a good meeting, and a good meeting is determined by not just Dwayne and I talking, but the group dynamics. So we had group dynamics, okay? The other key things to a successful meeting is finishing on time or early, which we did, again, and including a 30-minute lunch. So when you hit all 3 of those, you know it's a good meeting. So we had outstanding group dynamics. I was very pleased with the complimentary responses. So let's talk about 8A. As Chuck said, in conjunction with the management board voted unanimously to approve the amended adopted budget from 2015-2016. So that was a unanimous movement. 8B, there was a lot of activity relative to 8B, and there's a couple moving parts that we need to talk about. The EPA work plan has been talked, it was $625,000. There was a $25,000 EPA grant for resilient coastal community planning that was brought in. Everything was fine, and we got down to the $400,000 RFP for local match, which had a $300,000 break for science and technology and a $100,000 break for partner education or engagement, okay? Much discussion about should the 100 be rolled into the 3 and make it all part of, or should stand separate and distinct. Well, as any good committee would do, we voted on it and ended in a tie vote. Okay, so you know you have dynamics. So that is now brought forth to you. But this is all wrapped underneath that tentative discussion, right? So I was excited when we had a tie vote because that told me that we have group dynamics, okay? All right, so in regards to the local contribution share, so we brought you a tie vote in that section. In the local contribution share, there was some dissension. We did agree to change the RFP to an RFQ. There was discussion about that. There was the supermajority agreed with the RFQ. There were some concerns that the RFP may cost additional costs, but overall the group agreed that the RFQ would be a better way to go in dealing to grant support. Much discussion about what we get, and we've had these discussions before. When you bump something from 60 to 80,000, as the STEM recommended on the grants, what's your return on that $20,000 bump? So again, we had discussion with that. We looked at our finance advisory group, and this is the type of stuff that we agreed to keep it in there as a placeholder under the tentative discussion with the 80, but there was a lot of discussion about the value of that bump relative to the program, and basically the overall concept of the return on investment on grant proposals over the long run. As Captain Frank said, there was a lot of support and discussion about the small grant program, which is basically the $2,500 to a $10,000 range. We were talking about bumping the range, but after much discussion and total appreciation for the CAC's recommendation, we concurred with that and decided that that gave us an excellent opportunity for moving forward in that $2,500 to a $10,000 range. Still under your 8B, we talked about again, the small grant program. There was clarity that that's not money for research. It could be associated with graduate students and pilot programs. One of the things that we brought to you before was, how do we look at off-cycle funding? That's a very complicated matter in the business that we're in, but the small grants program may give us an opportunity to take a chunk out of that. So in summary, we supported the amendment budget for 25-16. We approved the tentative budget with key emphasis on the word tentative. We approved the CCMP work plan. The other matter of business that we went through there was we had some assortment of issues that were follow-up. The boundary amendment criteria has been developed. That'll be brought back for finalization. Bill Tredick did a report on the stormwater feasibility study that's underway with anticipation that a final or near final for review will be brought back to the management board in April. Kathy talked about the Brandon website development. Dwayne talked about Indian River County joining. That's due for April meeting, perhaps an action in June. Kathy talked about our project field trips, where, if you remember, we're going to put membership from staff and the different committees and go as a team and look at these projects. I mentioned off-cycle funding, and then last but not least, by unanimous vote, the management board elected to continue with myself and Marty Smithson as chair and co-chair for another year. Any questions? We good?
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, I just want to thank you, Bob. You're always very comprehensive in your reports, and we appreciate that.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Bob.
We're ready to move to item 6. It's consideration of the consent agenda. We've already approved the minutes, previous minutes, sufficiently. Are we okay with that sufficiently? Yeah. Then 6B, there was the final draft, the conference policy document, management conference policy document. Please do go to the website to look and review that, and just take some time and do that, please. So I'm encouraging each one of us.
Mr. Chair? Just a
Please.
point of clarification. We had promised the management board, and we'll do this across the entire conference. We will take that one set of comprehensive edits, do a, line strike revision, sometime maybe towards the end of next week. We will email that to everybody in the conference, as well as post it on the website to move this along.
Thank you, sir. Then item 6C, the monthly financial information, which is
Mr. Chairman, are you looking for a motion on the consent agenda?
yeah, and I'm also looking, I've gone through so many of these different budgets, I don't remember the monthly. Did, Frank, we had a monthly in the package? Or-
Yes, it was included in the advance package.
It was as of December, the end of December? And we are in February? No, I'd probably put that under the, is that the kind of timing that we get from folks?
In order to get the advanced agenda items out, we didn't have
Gotcha.
time to
Okay.
run January's number and
Okay.
email it to January.
Okay. All right, so I just want to make sure which one we were looking at. So what we're looking at, the monthly information that we're considering here in item 6C is December. And yes, it was part of the package. I just didn't realize that was considered the current month. We have a motion on the consent, please.
Move approval.
Been moved by member
Second,
Zadowski, seconded by member Wheeler. Further discussion, other questions? Is there any public question on this? Is anyone that wishes to vote no? Consent agenda is approved unanimously. On item 7. Yes, sir, please.
Good morning, members of the board. Just an update that per the RFP that was released for financial audit for our first fiscal year 15-16, that RFP came in, firms were ranked. James Moore and Company won the solicitation. We are currently under a 5-year contract with them, and we are deeply involved in our first fiscal year 15-16 financial audit. We are coordinating with members of the conference, Carolyn Ansay, General Counsel for the Council, and with Special District Services, our finance and accounting and payroll and budget provider. So those actions are ongoing, and barring any calamity, we expect the final report to come in on time in March for your acceptance and review at the scheduled board meeting.
Questions, please?
Just looking forward to the report.
As are we.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Ansah, you had any other comments on that? No. On item number 8, new business, please.
Good morning. Provided the agenda item is the fiscal year 2015-2016 final amended budget. For purposes of bringing you up to speed on the process, our fiscal year ended September 30th, 2016. Final invoices, final billings, final reconciliations occurred for this first fiscal year through the month of December. So we did not have an opportunity to have a final amended budget in the normal time frame of November, December. Once those final billings and reconciliations came through, this document was presented to members of the Finance Advisory Subcommittee, members of the Science, Technology, Engineering, and Modeling Committee, members of the Management Board. This document is posted on our website, is provided to you in advanced items, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have on the presented fiscal year 2015-2016 final amended budget, and request a motion to adopt by resolution this final budget.
Have questions, please? Well, I see no questions at the moment. I would just, out of an abundance of sort of caution, let's just give a, we have any questions from the public? I see none. We have motion, please?
So I'll move approval of the budget as presented.
From Member Powers. Have a second, please?
Second?
And seconded by Member Zadowski. Further discussion? Anyone wish to vote no? That's accepted unanimously. Yes, thank you, sir. B?
Thank you.
Okay, we're on item 8B, work plan and preliminary budget. And I want to give you kind of a sense of the lens that we were looking at this when we first initiated the staff discussion, and then we have modified. So this is the first time that we have actually brought this through our conference, and you got recommendations, and there'll be some overlap. But there's a couple other considerations that I think you should know on the front end of this. And the first is that we are retiming the delivery of this work plan discussion, actually pushing the RFPs a little later in the year, which gives us a greater amount of time to do due diligence on RFPs. It aligns better with some of the discussions up in Tallahassee and in Washington, D.C. But most importantly, it is giving us the ability to better align our budget with our upcoming work plan. And so I want to suggest a language change. In all of our advisory committees and even in staff, when we say work plan, we really mean the EPA grant work plan. And so I'm going to suggest that when we talk about our implementation plan for a fiscal year, that we either call it the business plan for the fiscal year or our, Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program implementation plan. So you can separate the grant and you can separate the other portions. So if you look on your slide, we are looking at 3 separate revenue and expenditure budgets and plans that actually begin to develop a more robust National Estuary Program, but maybe more importantly, most of you know we are deeply embedded in our 5-year program evaluation from EPA. And while we meet, I believe we will meet all of the obligations to the EPA, I can tell you that we are not in the excellent range in all of those areas. And so some of our suggestions today will move us into excellence on all of the EPA review considerations, and I believe give us a more robust and interconnected program across those 3 areas of citizen engagement, science, and restoration implementation. So I want to walk you through this step by step. And so if you see in this graph, we're going to first look at the local cost share dollars, which you all contribute as part of the interlocal agreement, and we are focusing, per your direction, on restoration, turn dirt, shovel ready, the kinds of projects going to make a difference for water quality and habitat in the Indian River Lagoon. We have included a small grant component to this, and we had been talking with Kevin on this. Because the small grants are going to come out of license plate, but in South Florida those license plate dollars go to the South Florida Water Management Districts, we will use some of that South Florida dollars for small grants. So we have a lagoon-wide small grants program. So that's the only nuance that's a little confusing. So I'll talk about that in detail in a minute. And we will have an RFP for implementation projects. And then in a minute, you'll get a chance to decide whether you want to go RFP or RFQ on the grant side. And of course, our administration comes out of that portion. There was some discussion with individuals who said, well, why don't you take administration out of the EPA dollar? And there's one really compelling reason why, and that is that under EPA Section 320, you are precluded from almost doing anything in Washington that would allow me to go up and talk to our elected officials about our needs. And so I believe this is a smart structure. And so that would be that 1.5 million total. It'd be administrative, restoration, with a small amount in small grants. The Section 320 grant amount, you'll notice, is $625,000. We were able to secure, when we were in New Orleans, a grant for $25,000 in additional revenue from EPA for community resilience planning, and you'll see that in a minute. And the focus of the EPA grant will be on science and technology that contributes to the CCMP. Our CCMP revision, the Comprehensive Conservation Management Plan revision, and we've had a lot of discussion about citizen engagement and education, and I want to suggest in the big picture that when we talk about the NEP program doing citizen engagement, what we really are talking about is taking the science to the level that the public can understand it. And so even yesterday, I'm even more assured that this is where we'll move with these RFPs for the engagement side, is taking some of that complicated science and doing infographics with maps. You know, where are all the septics? You know, where are the needs for, let's say, biosolids? And so this is not education in the K-12 world of education. This is about communicating what we do and the science of what we do to our citizens so they better understand, you know, the work at hand. And then lastly, the small grants program, which will be a combination of license plate in Brevard, Volusia, and Indian River County, and then a small contribution for Martin and St. Lucie counties. So that's the preamble, and we'll start with the local cost share. So we're anticipating $1.5 million in revenues for the fiscal year 17-18 budget. The administrative side is really, it's a level budget based on our current budget this fiscal year. In fact, it's about $70,000 less, but that's more of a budgeting. We are beginning now that we're operating to understand what our category needs are. And so we will be coming in with a flat budget of $510,000. And that has small incremental buffers where we need it for audit issues and other things. The restoration projects, and what I've done here so you can see where the Science Committee and the Management Board may have been in agreement or disagreement, is the staff recommendation is in black, the STEM AC recommendation in red, and if there was a counter or different Management Board recommendation in green. So when we look at restoration projects, we had originally looked at $990,000, and the focus, and this was true across the board, I think we are in broad agreement, and I heard it yesterday at the Indian River Lagoon Symposium, that nutrient reduction is the focus, that, you know, restoration of habitat is the focus. And then if those are the areas that we need to really be, you know, strategizing and making sure that we are getting water quality right, and the follow-up will be habitat restoration, which includes a number of items, including, you know, oyster filter feeders, bivalves, living shorelines. And so that 990, our original suggestion was $880,000 in restoration projects, and the science, technology, and engineering and modeling community felt that we get such good return on investment with the small grant support that currently Amy Adams is giving, and I'll show you some data on that, that possibly the council would like to consider increasing that technical support to local communities. This is probably even more apropos in light of these additional dollars that may be available, but that will be one decision for you today to decide what you want in this tentative budget for that line item. And you will see in that third bullet, under the local project proposal grant support, so we are now kind of between $60,000 and $80,000, depending on how you decide to go. Management Board, as Bob said, was split right down the middle. So there was a good amount of debate. And then small grant program, we're recommending $25,000 for each of the 2 southern counties, and that would be connected to the South Florida Water Management District annual contribution. So we have a small grants program in all 5 counties. So with this particular bucket, one of the questions we want you to consider is, do you want in this tentative budget to go to the high number? Do you want to go to the lower number? And do you like this approach in analysis? And so I'll open that up, and just for your edification, I asked Amy Adams, and this is actually part of our 5-year program evaluation. We were going to tease the last 5 years, but I asked Amy to, through Frank, to give us your numbers since you've been working for us. And before you are the grant deliverables. So these were the successful grants, based on her contract going back all the way to 2001, and so we are seeing significant return on investment for our partners, our local community partners, by providing technical assistance. And that technical assistance is part of the EPA guidance and part of our program evaluation. So I think the first question for you to consider is, how you feel about increasing that based on staff recommendation, or should you want to, take the advice, and go in a different direction. So this is item number 1 would be, how do you want to parse the local council contribution? I'll just open for discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Please.
I think I've always liked taking the high road, and I think we ought to reach for the river lagoon needs help as soon as we can get it. I think we just go to the higher budget. I don't think there's any way forward but to reach as high as we can. We've been successful with the staff doing what they're doing, and we're getting good support from Tallahassee. I think we go with a higher number.
Well, I don't disagree, but I think we need to be clear more, because I don't know that we're just talking about $20,000.
And Mr. Chair, could I actually thought about this, and I wish I had explained it in the management board this way, but when we look at grant support, those projects are implementation projects. So that support is not for education, and some of the softer issues. Those are 319 grants. Those will be some of the grants should our legislation pass this year. And so that really is the technical support to get proposals in for restoration and implementation. And so it very much does connect. One other point that I think you should all be aware of, and you will see this in my request for action, the staff request, is that our intent is to remove that technical support item from a broad RFP, and that in the 17-18 year, which will start in the next few months, we would put a separate RFP out for the implementation projects, and that call would be specific to nutrient reduction, and restoration. And then we would have a separate RFP for that grant support and technical capacity. It has never worked in the review process, trying to compare education projects to implementation projects to what I would call an external staff support. So that would be a separate RFP.
What we had done historically, and Dr. John knows because he was more intimately involved, but historically what we've done is just awarded that monies because it had such a high impact, such a high positive impact, and it's very difficult to see how we could get a higher impact. And so I wasn't talking about the amount of money, I was talking about the process that we were talking about. We were going, what's an advantage of going with an RFQ? What's the advantage would we see of doing one way or another? Let me be as unbiased as perhaps I might be.
here's my understanding, and I've done both RFQs and RFPs. You know, an RFQ, you're basically taking, you know, you're going to go out for qualifications. You're going to rank those qualifications based on a response. You need to have, in my world, coming from industry, I like to have a tight scope of work, whether it's an RFP or an RFQ. But once you award either to a single or maybe two entities in an RFQ, then you negotiate, you know, a contract, and we bring the contract to you. An RFP, you know, is kind of has both, you know, we're going to determine what the product delivery is, you know, and we're going to review both the expertise as well as other support documentation that's brought. So you can go both ways. You know, for me, it's just personal preference. I always think an RFP is a little bit cleaner, but RFQs are very useful if you don't know what your community of capacity is, and you want to see who's out there who may be able to bring more, maybe not more value, but a different value. So it does not preclude us from coming back. Remember, this is a tentative budget. When those RFPs go out, it's possible that, you know, at least with the support grant side, that we come back and said, we have 3 or 2 or maybe 1, you know, incredible resource here. You know, here's your options to move forward with contract. So, you know, I don't know, Drew, you have done this a lot. You may be able to bring more clarity.
I mean, it's generally, if you're looking for services and looking to create a relationship that benefits the organization, I've just found RFQ to be a lot more useful because you can really dig into how that relationship would work, you know, what the qualifications are, and then negotiate something that really fits the organization's needs better. That's just sort of been my experience, particularly on service contracts.
And my general, at least, experience is that usually with RFQs, those are multi-year contracts.
We're looking at two things, and I think we're looking at the amount of money, and I believe there's been support, and we're going to ask for a motion, but there's been support for an increase from $60,000 to $80,000. And the support would be based upon the history of the result, and the history of the result has been phenomenal.
Yes.
So I think we're all pretty attuned to that. But the other thing that we're asking for is the methodology, and the methodology is whether we ask for a proposal or whether we ask for qualifications. And it's not as if we don't know. My concern, maybe this is just of what some of the experiences some folks will fluff you with their qualifications, and they can't do what they say they can do, and they have all these great claims. We've got solid history. We've got, 10 years of solid history? Okay, so I'm just expressing my perspective on it, and we get a motion?
Well,
the question.
I'd like to work you all the way through
Okay, you don't want on this.
And so I don't think we need a motion
Okay.
other than if you have agreement on the dollars. What we'll do is show you, you know, the roll-up budget once we've seen all these categories. And then if there's some discussion about the financial side, we can take that as a single item if that's okay.
There seems to be consensus. Is that accurate or not?
Yes, but I just want to be on the record to say, the grant side of things is something I've supported, whether it be on my commission side or here. You know, the return on the investment is clear, and so we can see the physical results of a grants department or a grants process. So that's first and foremost. And then the other is from an RFQ, RFP side, you know, my concern is we get these proposals, and oftentimes they come in, you know, very low ball, and you get caught up in what's the lowest possible costs for doing something. And it's never, I would say not never, more often than not, we don't get the value. So I'd rather have a higher value return on whatever the process is. If it's request for qualifications, I would support that. So, but going for the lowest bid, more times than not, in my experience, just from my commission side, has been atrocious. So.
Further discussion? Please.
Okay, the second area that we're looking at is the EPA grants work plan. And as you know, in fact, Jennifer just mentioned, we're being recommended that the sooner we get it in, the better. Normally, this would have a June 1 deadline for application, but we also, because we are a state agency, run that proposal through DEP. So this one has a time constraint, and I agree that as soon as we get it in, the better. And so it has been increased from the base 600,000 to 625 based on a successful proposal that we and Chuck and staff wrote in the hotel, you know, in New Orleans. And so we do have 25,000 now for some of the CCMP planning for community resilience. That will be part of our CCMP. And so we are requesting $100,000 to do the CCMP technical support. We already have an RFP that's on the street right now. It's renewable. It has 6 months of budgetary capacity, and so this ultimately would extend that contract, should we be happy with that contract at the time of recontracting, and that would directly go to CCMP implementation. I am convinced even more, especially if we're successful at the legislature, that we are at a moment of very unique convergence, that we're going to have a 10-year revision of our comprehensive conservation management plan with the potential for 10 years of recurring funding, and those two pathways need to come together as soon as staff and our team can possibly get that CCMP. We are recommending $100,000 for citizen engagement, communication, and program implementation. This would be within the office capacity. That would be split between $50,000 in our renewable contract with Ideas to extend the work already underway, and then $50,000. And this, you know, there was some discussion about what is engagement and collateral development and printing. We have $10,000 of EPA mandatory travel that has to be in that budget, and so I see that portion going to taking scientific information to public knowledge through kind of infographics and mapping. We have a tremendous need right now to take either county-wide or district-wide maps and make them lagoon-wide. So we don't have a lagoon-wide map for muck. We do not have a lagoon-wide map for septic yet. We need to take those maps. Mike Busha has asked to help us in that regard. He said, I'll only charge you what it costs us to do mapping, but we have a capacity and a need there. And then we heard very clearly from the STEM AC to make sure we left dollars within the EPA federal dollars for those communities that are looking to try to do matched grant dollars. And so we are proposing $400,000 of that 6 baseline to be split $300,000 for science and technology, and both the management board and the STEM AC agree, you know, that science and technology has to be directly related to CCMP activities, but with a specific focus on the restoration, nutrient reduction, water quality needs. And so the RFP would be written very specific to those guidances. And then $100,000 for partner engagement programs, and that would be letting our partners at the counties, you know, really reach out. So we would be helping them to do the actual on-the-ground education. We'd be supplying science and technology information. Ultimately, they'd be, you know, talking to the constituencies. And so this would be our recommendation from both staff, and we had good consensus here, I think, on our focus. We want to make sure, though, that we haven't left any holes, and so we are going to develop RFPs that are rigorous and way more demanding in certain areas than we have in the past for performance, and it will be directly linked to the EPA guidance of show us what your outputs or deliverables are, show us what your outcomes are, and define those outcomes on short, medium, and long-term strategies. And so we're going to build some of that EPA guidance into these RFPs. You know, we get a lot of reports, and I've been looking at our quarterly reports that have a lot of what I would call information that doesn't get you to knowledge. And I'd like to take those reports as they come in from our contractors and get them tight, useful, and directly applicable to our performance evaluation criteria with the EPA. So that's something staff would do. And then lastly,
Let me
okay.
interrupt just for a second. This portion of the budget, as best I understand, is the one of the greater urgency, as if we're able to come to an agreement. The more quickly we're able to come to an agreement on this portion of the budget, the more useful it will then be for our
That's correct.
Our mentors at EPA.
That's correct.
So
Okay,
let's
so-
please, if
sorry.
we've got questions on this, let's direct them so that we can.
And I'm going to roll you up to the, kind of a summary in a minute. And so the EPA work plan, this is based on our advisory councils, coming back, telling us where they think we should focus. Science and technology, you can see nutrients, seagrasses, filter feeder, muck, nutrient cycling. We had similar discussions. Everybody knows where the big push needs to be. And so while I thought there was going to be a lot of kind of trying to get down to, fund this project, we have very clear direction from our advisory committees on where we should focus the RFP intent. And then lastly, the small grants program. $125,000 of the revenues that come from sales of license plates are distributed county by county based on those sales. And so we have arbitrarily, as staff said, why don't we propose $25,000 for Martin, $25,000 for St. Lucie County for that small grants program, at least in this tentative budget. We can amend that tentative budget as we move forward, but it's important that you understand that there are legal and legislative obligations on these license plates, and what we're recommending is to use that guidance for all of the small grants and not try to do one thing in one county and one thing in another. So they would all apply and adhere to the license plate legislative guidance, and that guidance for the Indian River Lagoon plate is up to 5% of plate sales can be used for marketing. And we are on a downslide on these sales, by the way. So, we need to be doing some marketing to get sales back up and revenues. Up to 20% for education. 80% has to be restoration-based. So back in the day when this plate was created, there was a clear intent that these would be restoration projects. And so could there be a monitoring component? Possibly. But we would have to review and will review each of these proposals between $2,500 and $10,000 based on the strict legislative guidance. We'd have that in the RFP. And so the question came up the other day, well, Dwayne, how would you envision, what would that project look like? And so if Florida Oceanographic Society needs supplies to do oyster gardening, this is a project for them. If a Marine Resources Council needs to replant mangroves or bring mangroves to a school who will grow those mangroves for them and then bring them out for restoration, that would comply. And so there are a lot of small restoration needs out there, and we see this fits a very interesting niche that's not being met. And we can look at this based on both the proposals that come in, and we will have the same due diligence on those proposals, even that they're small, the same kind of deliverables. And then we can fine-tune this budget. We're looking at this as maybe a two-cycle RFP. We'll get it started. This will engage our Citizens Advisory Committee, where we will build between now and your June meeting the criteria for what this looks like. And so this is where we are on the tentative budget for adoption. And Frank, do you want to go through this? We've talked about it in big buckets, but the key is you have the ability to move within that tentative budget. Should we want to tweak some of the numbers that, for example, 60 or 80,000 in grants, because that is not within the EPA budget. We have till June to fine-tune some of those discussions based on the RFPs or RFQ responses, come back to you in April and then in June, and this is a big difference. It is my intent, if you agree, that we would come to you, the council, in June with an annual implementation plan for 17-18 that will have all of these projects. You know, for me, it's a business plan. All of the projects, all of the expenditures, you know, all of the revenues, full budget, detailed budget, and that in June you would be able to review that plan, and if you choose to move forward and adopt that plan and then the final 17-18 budget, then we begin the scope of work and contracting for those projects. And for the record, all of these RFPs will be reviewed with volunteers from our committees. We're going to build a robust review process for each one. You'll see what it's going to look like, and then staff knows exactly on October 1 where we're going for the next 12 months based on programmatic needs, programmatic strategies, and available revenues. And so, Frank, do you want to just quickly go through, and then
there
we
may
can...
be a question first for, we have a question for you, Greg.
Mr. Chair.
Please.
Dwayne, spoke to you about this when we talked, and I was waiting for you to get to if there was an opportunity for, did we talk about anything in emergency reserves in the budget? I don't know how they would be used, but I'm just going to, and I don't even know if this is the place or time to talk about it, but for instance, right now I have a huge pistia bloom in Moores Creek, and there's no immediate funding anywhere to be had. And so we have a huge input of ammonia being distributed into the lagoon from that creek, and volunteers are going to be pulling it out tomorrow. But whether it's a sewage spill or something like that in which we could assist in some way, maybe from gaining the education of what the outcome of what that situation was from a science standpoint, having some kind of an emergency reserve that says, okay, we have 2 scientists that can go out and study what's happening right now, take that information, create the science around it, and understand what the impact of that is. Has that been thought of, or, I mean?
Actually, not just thought of, but we discussed it. So when Bob was talking about in the management board, this off-cycle, you know, that issue came up from Laura Lee Thompson on a seagrass project about, you know, how does the council respond to kind of either an emergency or a unique opportunity that should come up, including match. And here's the challenge that I see, and I do think that if you pass this tentative budget, you know, we may want to, because you're not obligating any dollars yet because we have not put those RFPs out or RFQ to build that project list. I do see a value for having an emergency reserve, but the challenge I have, at least administratively, is that, you know, so is it first come, first serve? So, you know, if you had $100,000 in emergency reserve, what constitutes an emergency? How do you do the appropriate review with the public dollar so, you know, we're not just responding to kind of a, you know, a first come, first serve opportunity. So if we should go that direction, and I'm not saying we shouldn't, but if we should go that direction, I think we'll need to work together with council, with our legal staff, to build some sort of a criteria for what constitutes an emergency, how much money is available. Otherwise, I think it gets kind of complicated on how that money would actually get dispersed.
Well, that's
but
why
I do see a huge opportunity and value to have that.
And that's why we get to meet and have this conversation. And, you know, we have been through the morphing of an organization over the last year and a half or more. And so, you know, these are the types of things that come up. This gives you a chance. It gives we, the council, a chance to think about these things and bring it back at a later date. That's what I'm hoping to bring today. Just an idea and how it may morph or unfold or not. So,
please.
Just weighing in on this subject. At first blush, I'm thinking that it's a great idea, but then as you were talking, I'm thinking, we have state agencies, we have federal agencies, and we have counties and municipalities that are charged with emergencies. That's my thought. I'm thinking our budget is very limited. I think we should focus on projects, and because those are things that we can say, this, and this. These things need to be done, and we can do those kinds of planning. I don't think we have enough funds that we can set aside that would make anything more than a marginal difference in any kind of emergency. Those are my thoughts.
One consideration is the small grants program. While, it's not a lot of money, but at a 10,000 response, for those emergencies where, I'm going to make up something, a hurricane comes through and you lose, your entire seagrass restoration capability and you need to build some capacity. I could see that in a 2-cycle having some emergency response, but I do think we may want to consider at least identifying, if we are not the source of those dollars, are there other sources, through some of our partners at the federal, local, or regional level? Is there an avenue for emergency response? And be honest, I'm not aware of any, but that's due diligence that staff could bring to the next meeting in April, and we could have that discussion. Because this is a tentative budget. That tentative budget does not have to be finalized until June. And the fact is, we can still amend it even after that, should you choose to do so. And so we can bring back some ideas on that issue for the April meeting.
And the only reason I brought it up and even thought about it is because of what we're going through right now. And really, I was not so much on the response of removing, but the science. What happens to, in this case, Moore's Creek, or any other canal that has a quick input of pistia or any other algae that may come in? What is the discharge? What is the effect downstream? What is the lack of oxygen? Can we use that information from a scientific standpoint so that when we see these things, we can identify our STEM committee, for instance, if we have 2 or 3 scientists on our STEM committee that can be, $400, $500 to go out and spend, an afternoon or a couple days, create a report of the science behind what's happening to report back so that we can use that in the future if we see those types of things and be able to address them in projects that we may need in the future. Just a thought.
I think we're ready, Frank.
Thank you, Commissioner. Presented in your board packages is there's 2 documents that have to do with the 17-18 tentative budget. One is the final roll-up, which is the one that gets posted on the website. And the other one is quite a bit more detailed, and it provides columns side by side between the first approved 15-16, the final amended 15-16, the approved 16-17, our current budget, and the tentative 17-18 budget. In the large budget category under, well, first, allow me to start with the revenue side of the equation, and that's on the PowerPoint. There we go. For the 17-18 tentative, revenues remain the same as they were in 16-17. Federal reimbursed for $625,000, license plate estimate of $125,000. The membership contributions have not changed, and the subtotal is $2,250,000 in expected revenues. On the expenses side of the equation, the 3 large other expenditure items are the 17-18 EPA work plan projects, which will total $625,000. The IRL license plate funded projects, which, if you recall, it will be part of the small grants program for $125,000, and the member contribution funded projects for $990,000 that we just went through the description with Dr. DeFries. Salaries and benefits remains stable at $350,000. Facilities expenses is actually a $30,000 drop. Instead of $50,000, which is currently in our 16-17, we dropped that down to $20,000, as we expect to see around $20,000 in expenses.
The administrative cost line item remains the same at 30,000. The administrative services line item is another drop of 40,000. As we, if you recall in discussions of the current budget, legal fees was something that we were trying to get a grasp on. The number of contracts, the number of RFPs, the number of different actions that were required by this body in setting us up was significant, and we were not quite sure about where that was going to land. Based on our 15-16 actuals, we have a pretty good idea of where that will come in, and that's why we've requested a reduction of 40,000. So the net reduction in operating is $70,000 from our current budget. And at this time, I would entertain any questions and then a motion to adopt by resolution the tentative budget for fiscal year 17-18.
In doing this, how are we going to be able to fulfill the encouragement that we've received from EPA and still keep the other portions in a tentative? Are we structured?
We are structured. We have two additional actions for you to take once you've agreed to the tentative budget.
Have comments or questions, please? Comments or questions, please?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we accept this budget as proposed.
Tentative budget as proposed.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Kathy, you got that on Smith and Powers, please. Any further discussion? Is there any comment from public? Please, Mr. Yulovich. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, as I said, the management board unanimously endorsed the passage of the tentative budget. What I wanted to do, and oftentimes in my Reader's Digest version, I shortchange, when you have a 25-minute discussion in regards to the RFP versus RFQ and all, I just want to make sure that we understood why we had a tie vote. And in regards to the RFQ, there was two dissensions, and this has nothing to do with the tentative, but I just want to make sure everybody understands what's going on. The RFQ, there's two dissensions. The majority of the people there agreed with the philosophy that Drew presented, that it gave you a little more flexibility and maneuverability and fiscal management. In regards to the $20,000 bump for the grant support, the opposing group felt that the $20,000 should remain in restoration projects, because that's where the $20,000, if you look at your document, came from. And then the other one supported philosophy that Chris has said about indicating that, the return on grants. So I just want to make sure everybody understood that the 20 grand came from restoration projects to make it from 60 to 80, and that's why we had such a discussion. So I apologize, I shortchanged that discussion in my Reader's Digest version of presentation. So again, we totally endorsed the tentative budget. I just want to make sure everybody understood the clarity on the RFQ discussion and also on the $60,000 to $80,000 increase in grants at the expense of the restoration. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. And what staff has presented and what the motion entails is 60,000. Is that, we're aware of that?
And we could adjust that accordingly as we move into that June framework once we bring these RFPs and/or RFQs forward to you. And so, the local cost share component of this is not time constrained. And in fact, we have lots of opportunities to readjust that tentative budget based on what we see coming in from the RFPs.
And it's my understanding, in addition, that the existing budget proposal does not change to an RFQ. It doesn't make any distinction. It just gives, I think, staff continues to have the flexibility to approach it whichever. Is that true or not?
The RFP, RFQ discussion was specific to just grant writing support, not to the other issues. And so if you think about what we would do with your authorization today, is that we would begin immediately to develop an RFP for our implementation projects, that would hit the street, RFPs for the EPA component so we can populate the EPA projects, although that we will not wait for those to propose to the EPA, so we've been working with them. And so the only question about RFP or RFQ is for that grant writing support component.
We understand that. We're okay with where we are on our motion?
Let me understand, we are adding the 20,000 as part of your, the amended budget?
Whatever you choose, staff is fine with. I mean, it's such a small amount, we can adjust accordingly once we see the projects and the response to RFPs. So you have some flexibility in this tentative budget to move some dollars.
And I just want to clarify my position before when I talked about RFQ, RFP, from the standpoint of, and it's more on the bidding process of somebody with a contract. And to clarify, because I don't want anybody thinking that both are part of our process, but when contracts are bid, sometimes the contractor comes in really low and you don't get the project that you really wanted, and you end up with change orders and it costs you more and more at the end. So that was, that's my clarification on that. But I understanding the conversation that was had on the 20,000 taking out of projects, my position is you add the money into the grants, creates more of an opportunity for more revenue, for more projects. And I think we've seen very clearly, based on the graph that was given us before from a grant standpoint, they certainly have a return on the investment, which is what I always look for.
Thank you, sir. It's my understanding that we're not obligated to accept a low bid. It's also tied in, even with an RFP,
yes,
tied in with the qualifications of the bidder. So we're okay.
I'm just checking.
We're okay.
It's my own personal county's challenge.
We're okay. I think we're okay. Further discussion on the motion? Any wish to vote no on the motion to accept this tentative budget? I hear no negative votes. That's accepted unanimously. Thank you, sir.
Okay, the next action we're requesting is for the council to accept the fiscal year 17-18 EPA work plan and authorize staff to develop and submit that work plan proposal for Section 320 funding as soon as we can, get that through the review process and to EPA. So normally we'd be tracking to a June 1. Our goal is to try to fast track that as best we can. And as you well know, we're under a 5-year program evaluation. So we've got a lot going on, but we're going to try to get this done in March with your direction.
We have questions? Yes, ma'am? No? Any question? Do we have a question from public? We have a motion. Member Power to move approval.
Second.
And Member Zadowski. Is there further discussion? Is there any that wish to vote no on this item? This item is accepted unanimously.
Okay, and in light of the RFPs, I'm going to request, and you can discuss, we're requesting that the council authorize staff to develop and release. We have RFPs in the written draft. I'm going to add qualified RFPs, so they will have, and we would do that anyway, just to be clear, as necessary to identify the fiscal year 17-18 work plan projects, authorize us to work with the NEP Management Conference subcommittees to build committees to review and rank those project proposals that come to us, and then we will submit to you a program implementation plan. This will be a written plan that would include the budget, the full details of projects based on the recommendations and rankings, and you'll see the entire delivery of RFPs and those that were recommended. And then in the June 9th meeting, we will have an opportunity to discuss those priority projects that were ranked and reviewed by our advisory committees, and then move forward with an implementation final plan and final budget for fiscal year 17-18.
Questions, please? Yes, sir.
So, one of the, for the projects, the 990,000, you know, in our first year, we did a feasibility study for stormwater projects, partnered with the St. Johns River Water Management District. And I've had a chance to go over and visit with Ann Shortell, and I think, Dwayne, you were there, to digest sort of the best type of big stormwater projects from north to south on the lagoon. And, you know, I left that meeting saying, wow, there's a lot of bang for the buck with every one of these projects. We need to see that those go forward. I'm not sure if that's been offered to the council in a meeting or not yet, but, you know, at some point, I'm wondering if we have a role in going to phase 2 or getting to the next phase of some of those stormwater projects, whether we obviously can't pay for them, we don't have that kind of budget, but can we help with the engineering and design of those kind of projects? I don't see those projects fitting into an RFP framework. You know, if we were to decide to help with a major project, I'd like to have that opportunity to make that decision versus get locked into an RFP ranking process.
We could have that discussion in that April framework because we're planning to bring that final review, Bill Tredick, because we have been tweaking that project. Even our last meeting, we were sending the contractors back to, adjust a few things. There are 6 really impressive big projects. We'll bring that to you. There's 2 ways that we could do that, and that would be in our discussions in April. Even though we won't have all of the project lists in that plan, you could look at this, tentative budget and say, of the implementation dollars we have, a portion of those should be used for D&E for those specific projects out of the feasibility, and then our ranking and then ultimate decision point would just have a smaller amount of money for implementation. But, we all know that in order to implement a turn dirt project, you have to have the D&E done. And a number of these projects are not ready to go without further design and engineering. So we could have that discussion in April. I think we're well positioned, which is why I think this new timing works so much better than us trying to rush, RFPs out during the holiday season for a January in order to meet the EPA obligation. Our question to EPA was really, would you allow us to do this without specific line item contractual agreements on projects? And their instruction to us is that they will accept that work plan as long as we have specific outcomes and specific outputs from each of those line items. So it's way more work for us as staff because we're going to have to justify that $600,000 budget very specifically to those outcomes, even though we don't have a project in that category. But I think this works really so much better than where we were, and it aligns nicely with decisions at both in Tallahassee and kind of the timeline up in the Capitol as well. So yes, I think we should have that. We'll make sure that's part of the agenda.
So I guess we can vote on going ahead and putting the RFP out, which I think is what you're asking, without committing to the full amount at this point.
We wouldn't commit to those dollars until the June 8th meeting.
Okay.
When we bring you the recommended work plan and you'd see all the projects, how they were ranked, which ones staff brought in. So in April, if council should choose, what we need to do is work with Ann and the district to see which of those projects, where are they and what the possible needs would be. Mm-hmm. And then we could actually amend the tentative budget in the April framework, should you choose to do so.
And I would think that if we're looking to do that those projects that we might want to help support with the design and engineering, which is essential, and that just expedites the whole timetable. But it also is tied into projects that somebody has said, yeah, we'll commit the money. We don't want to just do stuff and put it up on the shelf. And one of these days, I don't want to put money for one of these days. Okay, so that's why we're talking about this specific point at the moment, so that we want, if we get into that, and I'm not opposed to that, and of course, it's going to be considered by the whole board, but if we do that, I think we want those that are potential recipients to know, you've got to firm up this thing. This isn't a what if. You've got to have it firmed up so that if we, in fact, do commit money, that there is implementation money available. That's how I would see it.
Right.
Other comments, perhaps, questions, disagreements, maybe. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
So did we get an action on the RFP, qualified RFP process? I lost my way here. I don't think we did.
No? Okay. We need a motion on that.
Move approval.
Second, Wheeler.
Been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Is there any comment from public, please? I see none. Is there any wish to vote no on that motion? I see none. That's accepted unanimously. Thank you.
And just for the record, I want to thank our volunteer advisory committees. Commissioner Fielding was actually in 2 of those meetings. You have chosen wisely on your delegates to represent you and advise you. We had really robust discussion. We have just an amazing management conference team. So I think we're going to see really big things coming forward. In the April meeting, we will show you where we are with the CCMP revision. We are pointed in the right direction. It just is too early to bring it to you until we clean up all of the comments and the information that we've gotten in the last 2 weeks. So we will have a draft CCMP structure for you in April.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Ansey, are you ready for 8C?
Yes, sir. You may recall last month we raised, or I should say 2 months ago, we raised the issue of officers. Your interlocal agreement and bylaws provide that the IRL Council Board of Directors has a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. When you were originally formed back in, I guess it was February of 2015, we initially enacted officers in March of 2015 because we continued on through that first year. Even though we didn't yet have a budget or funding source, you met as a body with officers. We then reinstated officers in March of last year, and it's now time for us to consider officers on a go-forward basis. At the last meeting, we suggested that anyone who is interested in serving as the chair to let staff know, and Dwayne did receive some inputs, and so we have some names of folks who've expressed an interest for you to consider. Doesn't mean that somebody who didn't get the opportunity to throw their hat in the ring can't do so now. But we did receive word from Commissioner Fielding, Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Zadowski, and Councilwoman Denny's, who this would be her I guess newcoming member, her opportunity to join as well. She submitted her name. So with that, the consideration of officers is before you, and you can determine the best process that you'd like to go forward.
Chair.
And Ms. Ansey is going to sort of oversee this flow.
So, Ms. Ansay? Am I recognized? Is that what you're saying?
Sir, I don't do that.
I would like to make a motion that our Vice Chairman, Kurt Smith, be elevated to Chairman. I would like to include in that motion that our Secretary, Chris Zadowski, Commissioner Zadowski, be elevated to Vice Chairman. And I would like to include in that motion that the representative from Volusia County, Deb Denny's, become Secretary.
Mr. Chairman.
Please.
I want to second that with a comment. I represent the same area for ag folks, 6 counties from Palm Beach to Volusia County, and to go find someone who wants to be my chairman, I got to use a shotgun. So it's nice to have people willing to do this. It's wonderful, the enthusiasm, and I wholeheartedly support Kevin's motion. I think it's the right motion, and I like the sequence of bringing the people in the counties that have supported this from the very beginning, particularly Brevard County, which is the majority of the river is along Brevard County. It all fits very nicely, and I think it's well thought out.
Mr. Chair.
Please.
Yeah, so, I think that sounds good. I like the motion, mostly because Kurt wants to hug me. No. But I do think it makes sense. I think, this was started a while ago, and I couldn't recognize Commissioner Fielding enough for what he's done to bring us to where we are. He and I used to be able to talk a lot, and I really miss those conversations because, if there's anyone whose heart is all about the lagoon, it's that guy right there. So it's really a great thing, but we need to rotate around. It doesn't need to be a district or DEP. It needs to be a local government rep. And I think with the events of last year and the citizenry of Brevard County that spoke up about wanting to do something for the lagoon is sort of telling. I know that the citizens of every county do that, but there was a specific, vote that Brevard County kind of stood out in, and I think it's good for the NEP to recognize that we recognize those citizens and what they're, deciding to do. So I think it makes sense. I'm supportive of the motion too.
Well, I will add to that too, that comment, Drew, Chairman Fielding's leadership, and the history will be clear that that's locked in. He'll always be the first chairman of this organization, and so his dedication and leadership in getting us to this point is recognized and appreciated.
Is there further discussion, please? Yes.
Well, of course I'm going to say something, Ed. Believe it or not, I was Ed's mentor at FAC when he first came up through, and I'm not sure who the mentor is. I think today, I don't know. I've watched Ed grow through the process as a commissioner in Martin County and stood by him in any number of discussions, fights, and presentations, and certainly, it was he who pushed forward for the five-county collaborative, which then this morphed into. Again, Ed Fielding has a vision. He knows how to get there. He's very well researched. He has been a leader above reproach, and I want to thank him for his service and what you've been able to do, taking an entity and reestablishing it. Dwayne, you said it probably more eloquently in the beginning about where we came from and where we are today, and a large part of that, a huge part of that, is because of Ed Fielding. So I'm very, very grateful to have been part of this, and thank you, and I appreciate the motion. As I say, if nominated, will serve. It would be an honor in any capacity to be here. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, speaking on behalf of Deb Denny's from Volusia County, she would be very honored to accept this. She was very willing to accept this position. So we have good representation in Volusia County. And thank you from her for the nomination.
Yes, sir.
To say ditto is really kind of shortchanging everything that people have said about you, but I joined this group, when was it, November of 14, I believe. And you were there, and as most of the rest of us were, and you just grabbed the gauntlet, and you've been charging hard ever since. So I don't think whatever we say here isn't going to be enough. So I just want to say thank you.
Yes, sir. Further discussion on the motion?
Yeah,
I think there's
one
a
other,
motion for.
I know we thanked you a lot, but I couldn't let it go by to point out the stellar and impressive job that Commissioner Sadowski did as secretary. I mean, the hours he put in.
Those notes were spectacular. I have never had a minute. Minutes have never been turned down once, never even adjusted. So I'm just saying.
Is there any further nomination? Any other nomination on the floor? Do we hear a motion for the nominations to be ceased?
Somebody make a motion.
Thought we got it.
Please. Is that a second?
Did I miss something? I thought we already had a motion, didn't you?
Please. I'm sorry, I didn't. Oh, there was already.
We had a
there
motion
was
and a
nomination.
second.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
All right, is there further discussion? Is there anyone that wishes to vote no on that? That's accepted unanimously. Thank you.
Kurt, got to go to work now.
Yeah. You want me to accept this now, or you want to finish the meeting? How about you finish the meeting?
Okay, I don't mind. I mean, that's okay.
I mean, technically, usually you switch, but it's, it doesn't
You
matter.
can.
It's,
It's our first time, folks, so just so you know. It really is, it's our first time.
All right, moving right along, I want to thank all of you for your confidence and your support. And so we're going to go into...
Curry, you gotta turn your mic on.
It's a training program now.
Off to a stellar start. Okay, again, I want to thank everyone for your support and your encouragement. So let's go to 8D. Mr. Bartlett?
Yeah, that one was moved up. I did it in the beginning, so.
Oh, okay. See, now I can't daydream. Now I have to start paying attention. Okay, number 9.
E.
Oh, 8E. Okay, that's above 9, yes. Okay, 8E. Ms. Anstie.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to give a quick update. When we last met, we discussed the transition from the county coalition to Indian River County. I've been working with the county attorney. After our last meeting, the coalition met to consider the action of withdrawing in place of the county government. There were some issues we had to work through after communicating with the county attorney. I was waiting for one last notice provision information from him yesterday to put into the second amended interlocal agreement, which I have drafted. As soon as I get that information from him, I will insert it, get the document back to the county, and they should have it on their next county commission meeting for, again, the first step in the process. So as you may recall, they need to see the agreement, vote that they would be willing to entertain it. We then vote at our next meeting unanimously to accept that. We sign it, they sign it, and then the transition would officially take place. So the process is underway, and I've been working with the Indian River County Attorney to make it happen. If you have any questions, I'm happy to
Mr.
answer.
Chair, this comment, the coalition of the 3 cities is pleased to have served, and we will serve as long as required, whatever that happens to be. We did take action effectively to go in hibernation. In other words, we will still be there. Our next scheduled meeting actually is the second Wednesday of 2018, but if we're needed before that for any reason, we're here.
Nice. Thank you. Any other comments? Thank you. Reports. Anyone have any reports they would like to share?
Mr. Chairman, I started to talk to you about the Pistia bloom, and we will be, we're looking for volunteers to assist us tomorrow morning, starting at 9 a.m. It is about a quarter-mile bloom in the Moores Creek. It is significant and very thick, and we have confirmation from the Orca Kilroys that we have significant ammonia being discharged from that bloom. The concern is if it all dies off, that will turn into muck and create, again, like an algae situation where we lose the oxygen, lose the fish, lose all of that. And we've also been working with trying to create some eelgrass in the freshwater portion of the Moores Creek to add value. So we're looking for volunteers. You can contact my office in Fort Pierce, St. Lucie County at 772-462 1410. This is going to be an operation by the city of Fort Pierce and St. Lucie County and a large number of volunteers. It's significant, it's a challenge, it's probably one of the first times I've seen something of this magnitude. So we're concerned about it, so we're asking for volunteers. As an update, the NEP sponsored and provided grant money for Wesley's Island restoration. It has been going very, very well, and I'll send you some pictures and things and video in the near future. We are having some problem with the escarpment and erosion from the recent winds that actually are taking some portion of the island. So that's somewhat of a challenge that we're faced with. And then lastly, you are all invited to the ribbon cutting for the Indian Hills Stormwater and Passive Recreation area that is on 52 Savannah Road in Fort Pierce. It is actually between Indian River Drive and US 1. That is a project that I have participated in for over 8 years. It was many grants came through, Florida Communities Trust, South Florida Water Management District. Amy, you really supported us in finding additional money, the issues team. So there were so many funders, and we talk about collaboration and what we are trying to do as the NEP, as the NEC, and it's about collaboration. And sometimes you have to find many pots of money to get projects done. And this is probably now about a $5 to $6 million project. Over 10 years in the making, and we've basically almost taken 100% of discharges out of that entire stormwater basin, and I think there are about 2,200 homes in that basin, which is incredible. So we've done that, and we've also increased the wetland restoration, which is huge. And now we're connected also from the ecotourism side. From Port St. Lucie through the Savannahs into Fort Pierce. We have one small segment left to do, and that is to cross the FEC rail or go under it. That will be part of the Greenways and Trails going forward. And you heard before from who was in here before? The Regional Planning Council, talking about how to coordinate from a tourism standpoint and from an ecotourism standpoint, and the Greenways and Trails. So all of that's really good stuff. We don't get to talk about all the great things that we do, and I'm raising it because I think the public needs to know that, you know, when they sit through these meetings and they watch them on TV and they sit for hours at end sometimes, that we're doing good things. We're really doing good things in our home areas, and so it's important that we raise those things, and I really hope you all come. I think and somebody else is going to talk about the ribbon cutting coming next Monday, but I don't want to take their thunder, but it's important that we tell the story and the successes that we are having. So that said, I'm very appreciative of being on this board. Thank you for your confidence of being the vice chair. I appreciate it. And again, welcome, Commissioner Smith as chair.
Mr. Sadowski, I would like to ask you if you can share with us if you have any ideas on how this cleanup is going to occur tomorrow. What are the procedures they're going to use?
Well, I can tell you it's going to be one of those interesting things because Moores Creek has limited access because of the canal, which was now turned into kind of a stream. So we've reconstructed the canal into a stream, and it's been decorated, and there's a lot of revetment on each side. So what we have done to start is we've done some practice. We've created our own little tools. We're going to take kayaks to the west in the canal, and we're going to take either floating mats of some sort, and then we're going to drag them down to the bridge, and then there will be a boom truck that's actually going to grab the material, pull it out, let the water drain, and put it into a truck. You know, we know that material could be used some other way, but we haven't had this experience. We don't have the experience, and we don't have. We're making machines, parts, because we just don't have them in house. So it's going to be an interesting process. We'll have a number of canoes. We expect probably 50 volunteers, and the idea is to move it all to the weir, and then we're going to mash it all up and then have them take it out and then put it in a truck and properly dispose of it. I don't know that we'll get it all, but it's going to be a very big effort because the roots are probably about 4 foot long, and they're very, very, very thick. I mean, I drive through there every week, probably 3 or 4 times, and it probably happened in a 8-day period, maybe 10. It's amazing bloom. I've never seen anything like it. Now, the water's clear because it's taken up a lot of, but, you know, when it dies, it's gonna be another problem, so, anyway.
Mr. Chair. So if we have people that we could point your direction, is a phone number they call? What was
Yeah,
that
they can
phone?
call my office at 772-462-1410, and certainly the St. Lucie County website will provide that. You can even call the main office, 772-462-1400, and you certainly can reach my office. It's,
Okay.
again, one of those things that it just pops up, and, you know, we know that there is, you know, fertilizer, there's septic tanks on either side of this canal, there's agricultural input, there's human input, so we know that it's a challenge, but this is where being able to do that science is, where's that input coming? Because it seems to be locally placed between 10th Street and 14th Street. So that area may be getting more nutrients for some reason, and we haven't done that investigation yet.
Thank you for that. It's very interesting. Mr. Powers, you had something to say?
Yeah, I have an update. At the last meeting, Commissioner Zadowski asked me to brief the board on a status of the C-23, C-24 SERP reservoir project. As you heard Drew mention, the final land acquisition is in the governor's budget. Currently, the state has about 85% of the land needed to complete that project. It's been discovered there are cultural resource issues with the current footprint, and those issues are being worked through. Now, there are two paths forward with that. The path that we're on now is to, through consultation, which is part of the process with the Seminole Tribe of Florida and dealing with ways to deal with those resources. And the alternative to that is to modify, well, within that same project footprint, then if we could modify the footprint of the reservoir so that it's deeper and short and make it smaller to accommodate that issue if it's not resolved under the current footprint. Or you can go back and ask for, set that one aside and get it modified, get the project modified such that you would acquire additional lands. That's a 3-year setback. That's a 3-year just to get the modification approved, authorized by Congress through the Army Corps. Staying on the path that we're on, looking forward, the land acquisition will be complete in 2017. And 2018 is the final design is budgeted and scheduled on the integrated delivery schedule, and construction completed or to be started in 2018. In 2020, and completed by, it's about a 18-month, 24-month build, so 2022. And that's the current status.
And you may or may not know that the Environmental Resources Department, through a taxpayer referendum, was able to purchase Cypress Creek and a number of other properties out near there that actually could be reconstructed as wetlands. So in a short term, there could be smaller projects that could be done to actually, not water farm per se, but certainly reconnect and add, these projects that may actually help take some of that effluent out of the system.
Absolutely. Well, thanks to the help of Doug Bernique and you and your board, there's a tremendous amount of momentum going on up there. 10 Mile Creek is the rehab of 10 Mile Creek. It's fully under construction, should be online by this coming rainy season, is just an example of that, and a lot of the dispersed water and water farming projects as well. So, a good point, and we'll continue to look at all of those opportunities.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I would like to thank two people here, Dr. DeFries, for Monday night. We have had an outreach in Vero Beach. I've been working 2 years to get a stormwater utility. We were successful in getting the step system a year ago. And he came down. We had great turnout at a meeting Monday night. Much appreciated. Lots of citizen input. I'd like to thank Dr. Windsor, also Dr. Soto, for coming to our city council on Tuesday. We again had very large turnout of interested, and only one negative citizen. I regret to tell you that my council, I voted for the stormwater utility. One other gentleman did, turned it down. Politics in any river county can sometimes be difficult, but I do want to acknowledge Dr. Windsor's help and Dr. DeFreeze's help, because it was much appreciated. I've had many comments back from the public about your contribution since the two of you are here, and you were heard loud and clear by the public. Maybe not by the politicians, but such is life.
Anyone else wish to comment? Mr. Bornick?
I'm going to try to make this quick. I rode down from Fort Pierce to Jensen Beach the other day along Indian River Drive, and for the first time since we've cycled out of one of the wettest winters we've ever had in the South Florida Water Management District history, I think it was the wettest winter since they formed the district in 1948. The river started to look blue again. I saw blue. I forgot what it looked like because it's been dark brown and green because of the wet cycle we've been in for a year and a half. And I've forgotten how beautiful it is. And for the first time in my life, I walked in and attended my first Water Management District meeting when Jack Malloy ran it in 1975. And I've watched through the years as some tweaks were done, taking humps out of the Miami Canal, a little bit here and a little bit there, but nothing significant to help the lagoon issues that we have here on a major basis until really 5, 6, 7 years ago. I'm seeing in my lifetime of 42 years of being involved with water issues, the last 5 have really given me hope that we really are going to see a blue lagoon, a healthy lagoon again, with all that the St. John's and the South Florida and this council, DEP, the governor, and the assets that they're throwing at the lagoon finally. It's just so rewarding to see all of this happening. And I just seen the lagoon blue again. I've forgotten how beautiful it is. It is truly one of the most beautiful sights to see it blue again. So just a comment, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
You're welcome. Do you have something you want to say?
Yeah, just, it occurred to me that there is one other budget request that the governor put. It's another new budget request that he put in. It's $22.2 million for storm preparedness grants, and that's eligible for wastewater systems that are, as hurricanes have been coming through and big storm events have been coming through, their systems have been overwhelmed into sanitary sewer overflows. We've experienced that in the lagoon and in other parts of the state. So this is available statewide, but this is another new budget request that's in his budget, and it's $22.2 million for storm preparedness for local
Have you gotten
governments.
any feedback from the Senate or the House side, whether they're going to like this or?
I know that there are representatives that do like it because they're specifically concerned with this issue, and one of those is Lat Vala. And he's the chairman over in appropriations in the Senate, but there's a lot of session. The session hasn't started, so.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, 3 or 4 things, that's super good news because that's an ongoing problem. And yes, we are spending hundreds of millions of dollars, and local governments have made those commitments, and we are expecting other folks to sort of step up to the plate too. And here are 3 or 4 areas. Harbor Branch Symposium, and that's an extremely useful venue. And I'm encouraging us to next year, if the board decides, but you'll need to decide fairly quickly, is that we then coordinate with their Friday public, because that's a very useful opportunity. I'm just going to mention 3 or 4 things because I'm wanting us to start becoming attentive to these things. Biosolids, we need to know about production. We need to know about disposition. We need to know where's all that going, and then volumes. We need to know that because those have similar signatures as sewage septic leaks. same stuff, just hardened. Storm, wastewater spills, Drew, you were mentioning, that was extremely good news. My understanding from and maybe we don't know, maybe it's because we're not fully informed, but my understanding from our utilities folks is that state wastewater spills are self-reported based upon one's conscience. Now, maybe it shouldn't be that way, but that's my understanding, is that not everybody reports all of their spills, and maybe not everybody even reports a spill from time to time. That's my understanding of how the thing works. And so I'm encouraging us that we need to know wastewater spills. We need to know what volume was spilled. We need to know where. We need to know why. And whys. And one of the whys is just what you've mentioned, is that these smaller systems become overwhelmed with stormwater. But we need to know those things, because many local governments are making these pledges, hundreds of millions of dollars in pledges. We need to get everybody on board with these recognitions and with these pledges. We've talked a little bit about this best pumping practices, and we've done so more in the context of individual farms. And it's true. If we will pump so that we raise the pump head up off of the bottom of the ditch, so that we don't pump all of the junk out and pass it on to somebody else, we will really cut our cost of reducing the contaminants. It's a lot easier to deal with contaminants in a confined space than once we have distributed it through our water dispersals, and then we have to run it into STA, stormwater treatment areas. That's a very expensive way to do it. It is a way to do it, but very expensive. Much cheaper to keep it contained and to pull it out. We used a Gradol when I was farming. We used a Gradol. We did that. We didn't do it because I thought it was the ideal way to solve somebody else's contamination problem. I really did it because I wanted to put the fertilizer back on the land. That was my motivation, was save money. And so that's what we did. But anyhow, here we're looking at the district, our South Florida district, and they're fixing to put in, they're in the process of putting in several new structures. And if we will change those structures from bottom opening to top opening, it will make an enormous difference in the amount of contaminants that then gets flushed and passed, because we can deal with that behind the structure. We need to, I'm encouraging us strongly to let's adopt the system that we want to focus our efforts and create the extraction of contaminants at the point where it's the least expensive. And if we can get St. John's, all of the major water movers, if we could get them involved in recognizing we've got accumulated contaminant, let's extract it there. Let's don't spread it and see then what do we need to do. The southeast coast of Florida, many of you know, or maybe you don't know, but the municipals need encouragement because there's 7 outflow that is partially, I don't even know at what level, but there's what level that outflow is treated. I don't know, but it's quite colored and you can't see through it, and it's tubes. You probably have dove in that area, but those pipes are 3 people big, and when you're on one side of them, you can't see the person on the other side. So it's not Perrier water. It's other kinds of waters, and so we need to recognize that because it's killing our reefs. Right.
Chair recognizes Mr. Bernique.
Yeah, just to that point, Kevin probably remembers this too. I remember reading where the Water Management District South Florida was cleaning out I think the Hillsborough Canal. This like 6 or 7 years ago, doing a major maintenance, and in the canal they found 3 cars, and one had a woman at the wheel who had been missing like for 35 or 40 years, still at the wheel. So, yeah. To your point, we need to keep the contaminants behind the structures, so.
No other comments? Next meeting will be March 10th, 2017. Doctor, would you like to have any comments on
Well,
the next
2
meeting?
points. Before you adjourn, we'll need to make a decision on the March 10 meeting, so you'll need to cancel. We are scheduled, you'll remember, we scheduled every month to give you the opportunity, and so if you don't want to have that meeting, you need to cancel it. And I do have one item in your package I do want to address. We gave you some additional paperwork just for your edification, you know, the agenda from yesterday's science meeting. Here's the news. I think we have the strongest scientific community probably of any time in the history of this region because of the new hires that are coming at the faculty levels, Commissioner Fielding, so I mean, there were a lot of new faces. And so I'm encouraged about how much focused research and connected research to the management side is going on. But we do need your input on this. In your packages, you will see the very first draft annual report for fiscal year 15-16 for the National Estuary Program and the IRL Council. We would like your input. We're going to email this to you. My kudos to Kathy Hill has been working on this, and if you look at it, it really is an impressive document that I think tells the story of our first year and then goes a little bit further to look ahead. It's our intent to put one of these out every year to showcase projects. We are going to take input from the entire management conference, but we are going to ask strongly that we're going to put a deadline on it. We haven't decided. Get your comments in before the deadline. I would like this in hand before the session begins in Tallahassee, which means we've got to get to printers. So you're going to have about a week to 10 days to give us your comments. We'll edit as necessary, especially look at language. Language matters, both politically and in the business world. But our intent is to get this printed and have it ready early in the session. But again, thank you, Kathy. It's an amazing amount of work for the first time, and I think you'll find it an impressive document. Thank you.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to cancel the March meeting.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Anyone wish to vote no? Passes unanimously. So the next meeting scheduled then will be Friday, April 14th at 9:30 a.m. right here in Sebastian. This meeting is adjourned.